The Harmony Ring space station floated in the darkness of space like a giant metal wheel. It circled slowly around a huge gas planet that glowed orange and red below. The station was home to thousands of beings from 12 different alien species. They lived together, worked together, and tried very hard not to kill each other. Emma Parker stood at the observation window and watched the planet spin beneath her. She had been on this station for 3 years now. 3 years away from Earth. 3 years of learning how to live among creatures that looked nothing like her. Some had scales. Some had tentacles. Some had too many eyes. But Emma had learned to smile at all of them. She was an engineer. Her job was to keep the station running. When pipes broke, she fixed them. When computers failed, she repaired them. When the air recyclers made strange noises at night, she climbed into the vents and figured out why. It was not a glamorous job, but Emma liked it. She liked solving problems. She liked making things work. The other aliens on the station did not quite know what to make of humans. Emma had heard them talking when they thought she could not hear. They called humans the crazy ones and the death wishers. They could not understand why humans climbed mountains for fun. They could not understand why humans swam in oceans full of predators. They could not understand why humans strapped themselves to rockets and flew into space just to see what was out there. Emma did not try to explain. She just did her job and kept her head down. The Velroth were the species that confused Emma the most. They looked like giant wolves that walked on 2 legs. They stood over 7 feet tall, covered in thick silver fur. Their eyes glowed golden in dim light. Their claws could tear through metal. Their teeth could crush bone. They were apex predators from a heavy gravity world, and every other species on the station was afraid of them. But Emma had noticed something interesting about the Velroth. They were also the most devoted parents she had ever seen. Alpha Cora was the leader of the Velroth security forces on Harmony Ring. She was massive, even by Velroth standards, with scars across her muzzle that told stories of many battles. Her voice was deep and commanding. When she walked through the corridors, other aliens moved out of her way. Even the station commander treated her with careful respect. Cora had a cub named Bryn. He was small and fluffy, with oversized paws and ears that were too big for his head. He was only 6 cycles old, which Emma had learned was very young for a Velroth. His fur was lighter than his mother's, almost white, and his eyes were bright with curiosity about everything. Emma often saw them together in the corridors. Cora would carry Bryn by the scruff of his neck, or the cub would trot beside her, his little claws clicking on the metal floor. Sometimes Bryn would wander too far, sniffing at something interesting, and Cora would make a soft growling sound that brought him running back to her side. They had never really talked, Emma and Cora. The Alpha would nod stiffly when they passed each other. Emma would nod back. That was the extent of their relationship. Cora was important. Emma was just an engineer. Their worlds did not overlap. But Emma watched them anyway. She watched the way Cora's whole body softened when she looked at her cub. She watched the way Bryn would climb into his mother's lap during mealtimes and fall asleep against her chest. She watched the gentle way Cora groomed her cub's fur with her terrifying claws. Emma had heard the story from other crew members. Cora's mate had died in a battle 2 years ago. She had brought Bryn to the station because she had no other family to care for him. The Alpha was raising her cub alone in a place far from their homeworld, surrounded by species who feared her. It made Emma feel a strange kind of connection to the Velroth leader. Emma knew what it was like to be far from home. She knew what it was like to be surrounded by others who did not understand her. Bryn was a troublemaker. Emma learned this very quickly. The cub was curious about everything, and he had a talent for escaping his mother's watchful eyes. Emma had found him in the engineering bay 3 times already, poking his nose into machines and chewing on cables. Each time, She had gently guided him back to the main corridors before Kara could discover where he had gone. She never told the Alpha about these adventures. She did not want to get the cub in trouble. Besides, she understood curiosity. She had been a curious child too. The station had been peaceful lately. Too peaceful, some said. The different species had their tensions, but nothing had exploded into violence for almost a year. The diplomats were proud of this. The engineers were suspicious. In Emma's experience, when things were too quiet, it meant something bad was about to happen. She finished her shift and walked back to her quarters. The corridors were busy with the evening rush. Aliens of all shapes and sizes moved past her, heading to dining halls and recreation areas. Emma nodded at the ones she knew. A few nodded back. She passed the Volrath section of the station. The gravity was higher here, adjusted to match their home world. Emma felt her legs grow heavy as she walked through. She saw Kara standing guard at the entrance to her quarters, Bryn playing at her feet. The cub was chasing his own tail, spinning in circles until he fell over dizzy. Cora's golden eyes met Emma's for a brief moment. The Alpha nodded once. Emma nodded back. Neither of them knew that in 12 hours, everything would change. Neither of them knew that the station's peaceful days were about to end in fire and chaos. Neither of them knew that a simple human engineer would do something that the galaxy would talk about for generations. Emma went to her quarters and fell asleep, dreaming of Earth and the sound of rain on windows. Somewhere in the Volrath section, Bryn curled up against his mother's warm fur and closed his eyes. The station hummed quietly around them, machines working in harmony, life support systems breathing for thousands of beings. And deep in Deck 7, a tiny crack in a fuel line grew just a little bit wider. The explosion came without warning. One moment, everything was normal. The next moment, the station shook like a toy in an angry child's hand. Emma was in corridor 9 when it happened. She was walking to her morning shift, a cup of coffee in her hand, thinking about the repairs she needed to do that day. Then the floor jumped beneath her feet, and she was thrown against the wall. Her coffee flew from her hand and splattered everywhere. Alarms began to scream. Red lights flashed in the corridor. The station's computer voice spoke calmly, as if it was not announcing disaster. Alert! Explosion detected on Deck 7. Multiple system failures in progress. All personnel proceed to emergency stations. Emma pulled herself up and started running. She was an engineer. When things broke, she fixed them. That was her job. That was what she did. The corridors were chaos. Aliens were running in every direction, some toward the emergency stations, some toward their quarters, some just running in panic. Emma pushed through them, heading for Deck 7. She could smell smoke now and something else. Something sharp and dangerous. Fuel. There was fuel leaking somewhere. She reached the junction between Deck 7 and Section Gamma. A crowd had gathered there, blocked by emergency bulkheads that had slammed shut. Through the small window in the bulkhead, Emma could see flickering lights and floating debris. The gravity was out in Section Gamma. She could see objects drifting slowly through the air on the other side of the bulkhead. And then she heard it. A sound that cut through the alarms and the shouting and the chaos. A sound that made her blood turn cold. It was a Volrath howl. But not a battle howl. Not a hunting howl. This was something different. This was the sound of a mother watching her child die. Gravity's out. My cub will perish. The voice was Cora's, and it was filled with a terror that Emma had never heard from the fierce Alpha before. Emma pushed to the front of the crowd. She looked through the window and saw something that would stay with her forever. On the other side of the bulkhead, Section Gamma stretched out in zero-gravity chaos. Broken equipment floated everywhere. Sparks flew from damaged wires. And at the far end of the section, a plasma conduit had been ripped open by the explosion. It crackled with blue-white energy, deadly and beautiful. Bryn was floating in the middle of the section. The little cub was tumbling slowly, his paws scrambling at nothing, his eyes wide with fear. He was crying, making small whimpering sounds that broke Emma's heart. And he was drifting. Slowly, helplessly, he was drifting toward the open plasma conduit. Kara was at the entrance to the section, her massive claws digging into the doorframe. She was trying to launch herself toward her cub, but every time she pushed off, she spun out of control. Her body was too heavy, her instincts too tied to gravity. Vorath were creatures of the ground. They could not function in weightlessness. "Someone help!" Kara screamed. "Please! Someone save my cub!" But no one moved. The other aliens watched through the windows with horror on their faces, but no one moved. Some species could not survive in zero gravity. Some were too afraid. Some simply did not know how. Emma looked at Bryn. The cub was maybe 30 seconds from the plasma conduit. Maybe less. His small body was spinning slowly, helplessly. He could not control his movement. He could not save himself. She looked at Kara. The alpha was clawing at the walls, trying again and again to reach her child, failing again and again. Her golden eyes were wild with desperation. Emma thought about the risks. The section was unstable. There was debris everywhere. One wrong move and she could be killed by flying metal. One wrong angle and she could drift into the plasma herself. The smart thing to do was wait for a rescue team. The smart thing to do was let the professionals handle it. But Bryn had maybe 20 seconds now. And there was no rescue team coming in 20 seconds. Emma had spent her whole life being careful. She had kept her head down. She had done her job. She had not taken unnecessary risks. That was how you survived in space. That was what everyone taught you. But now a child was dying, and Emma found that she did not care about being careful anymore. She pushed forward and slammed, her hand on the emergency override panel. The bulkhead began to open. "What are you doing?" Someone shouted behind her. "You'll be killed." Emma did not answer. She did not have time to answer. The bulkhead opened just enough for her to squeeze through, and she pushed herself into the zero-gravity section. The world changed instantly. Her feet left the floor. Her body began to float. The chaos of the section surrounded her. Debris was everywhere, spinning and tumbling through the air. She could hear the crackle of the plasma conduit. She could feel the heat on her face. Kara was staring at her with shock. "Human, what are you? Get ready to catch him." Emma shouted, and then she kicked off the wall and launched herself into the void. She had maybe 15 seconds. Maybe less. Bryn was tumbling toward death, and Emma Parker, simple engineer from Earth, was the only thing that could save him. She flew through the air, her body spinning, her arms reaching out toward the crying cub. Around her, the station burned. Behind her, a mother screamed. Ahead of her, a child waited. Emma did not think about fear. She did not think about death. She thought only about reaching Bryn before the plasma did. Emma had trained for zero gravity. All humans who worked in space had to. But training was one thing. Flying through a burning section filled with deadly debris was something else entirely. She twisted her body as she flew, using her arms to control her spin. A piece of broken metal tumbled past her head, missing her by inches. She felt the wind of its passage against her cheek. She did not slow down. Behind her, she could hear Kara making sounds that were not quite words. The Alpha was watching, helpless, as a tiny human flew toward her cub. Every instinct in Kora's body was screaming at her to do something, to save her child, but she could not. Her body would not work in this environment. She was trapped at the edge of the section, claws digging into the wall, watching everything. Emma focused on Bryn. The cub was 10 meters away, tumbling slowly through the air. His small paws were still scrambling, still trying to grab onto something that was not there. His eyes found Emma, and for a moment, his crying stopped. He stared at her with confusion and hope. "I'm coming!" Emma shouted. "Hold on, little one." She did not know if he understood her words. She did not know if Velreth cubs could understand any language at that age. But maybe he understood her tone. Maybe he understood that someone was coming to help him. A cable whipped past her leg. It caught her pants and tore the fabric, leaving a thin cut on her skin. Emma ignored the pain. She was 8 meters from Bryn now. The plasma conduit was crackling louder behind him. She could see the energy dancing inside it. Hungry and waiting Dodd, she needed to change her angle. She was moving too far to the left. If she did not adjust, she would miss Bryn and fly past him into the wall. Emma reached out and grabbed a floating piece of equipment. It was heavy, some kind of monitoring device. She used it to push herself to the right, throwing the device away in the opposite direction. The device spun off into the chaos. Emma's trajectory shifted. 6 meters to Bryn. The cub was close to the plasma now. Too close. Emma could feel the heat increasing. The air itself seemed to be getting hotter. She was going to make it. She was going to reach him. She pushed harder with her legs, trying to increase her speed, but there was nothing to push against. In zero gravity, you could not make yourself go faster once you were moving. You could only change direction. 4 meters. Bryn was crying again. The plasma crackled and spat a tongue of blue fire that came within a meter of his tail. The cub screamed. Emma stretched her arms as far as they would go. Her fingers reached toward the cub. She was so close. So close. 3 meters. 2 meters. Her fingers touched fur. Emma grabbed Bryn by the scruff of his neck, the same way she had seen Cora carry him. The cub's body jerked as she caught him, and suddenly he was pressed against her chest, his small claws digging into her uniform, his face buried against her shoulder. "I've got you," Emma whispered. "I've got you, little one." But they were still moving. The plasma conduit was still ahead of them. And Emma had no way to stop. She looked around desperately. There was a floating panel about 2 meters to her left. If she could reach it, she could kick off it and send them back toward Cora. But she would have to be fast. Very fast. Emma twisted her body, holding Bryn tight against her chest. She used the cub's weight as a counterbalance, shifting her center of mass. Slowly, painfully, she began to rotate toward the panel, 1 meter to the plasma. She could feel it burning now, could feel her skin growing hot on her back. Bryn whimpered against her chest. Emma's foot touched the panel. She did not hesitate. She pushed with every bit of strength she had, launching them away from the plasma conduit with desperate force. They flew through the air, spinning now, moving fast. Too fast. Emma had pushed too hard. They were going to hit the wall badly. They were going to crash into the gravity-enabled section at a dangerous speed, but they were moving away from the plasma. That was what mattered. Behind them, the conduit released a massive discharge of energy. Blue-white fire erupted from the opening, filling the space where they had been just a second before. The heat washed over Emma's back, and she smelled her hair burning. But they were alive. They were moving. Cora was ahead of them now, her arms reaching out, her golden eyes locked on her cub. Emma could see the exact moment they crossed the threshold between zero gravity and normal gravity. It was like hitting a wall made of invisible force. Gravity grabbed them and pulled them down. Emma twisted at the last moment, trying to land on her feet, trying to protect Bryn from the impact. She failed. Her ankle hit the deck at a bad angle and something cracked. Her elbow slammed against the floor and pain exploded up her arm. But she held on to Bryn. Through all of it, she never let go. They slid across the deck and came to a stop at Cora's feet. Emma lay on her back, gasping. The cub still clutched to her chest. Every part of her body hurt. Her ankle was screaming. Her elbow was throbbing. Her back was burned, but Bryn was alive. The little cub was shaking, his small heart beating fast against her chest. But he was alive. Emma closed her eyes and let herself breathe. Above her, Cora stood frozen, staring down at them with an expression that Emma had never seen on a Varith face before. It was not the fierce pride of a predator. It was not the cold calculation of a warrior. It was wonder. Pure, overwhelming wonder. And then Cora dropped to her knees and gathered both of them into her massive arms, holding them against her chest, making a sound that was somewhere between a growl and a sob. Emma did not move. She just let the alpha hold her, and she held on to Bryn, and for a long moment, none of them said anything at all. The alarms were still screaming. The section was still burning. But in that moment, surrounded by chaos and fire, three very different beings had found something that transcended species and language. The medical team arrived within minutes. They found a strange scene waiting for them. A massive Velroth alpha was sitting on the floor, holding a human woman and a small cub against her chest. None of them seemed willing to move. Emma's ankle was broken. Her elbow was badly bruised. The burns on her back would need treatment. But when the medics tried to take her away from Cora, the alpha made a low growling sound that stopped them in their tracks. "She stays with me," Cora said. Her voice was rough, like she had been crying. "She saved my cub. She stays with me." The medics looked at each other nervously. Nobody argued with a Velroth alpha, especially not one who was holding someone protectively against her chest. They treated Emma where she sat, cleaning her burns, wrapping her ankle, examining her elbow. Through all of it, Cora kept one arm around her, as if afraid that Emma might disappear if she let go. Bryn had fallen asleep against his mother's fur. The little cub was exhausted from fear and crying, and now he slept the deep sleep of the young and safe. His small paws twitched occasionally, dreaming of something that Emma hoped was peaceful. The fire suppression systems finally activated in Section Gamma. The plasma conduit was sealed. The danger was passing. Emergency crews rushed through the corridors, repairing damage, checking systems, making sure the station would survive. Emma sat quietly and watched it all happen. Her body hurt, but it was a distant kind of pain. She felt strangely peaceful, strangely calm. Cora was staring at her. The alpha's golden eyes had not left her face since the rescue. Finally, after a long silence, Cora spoke. "Why?" Emma blinked. "Why what? Why did you do it?" Cora's voice was soft, confused. "You could have died. The plasma could have killed you. The debris could have killed you. You are small and soft and breakable, and you threw yourself into that chaos. Why?" Emma thought about the question. It was a good question. A reasonable question. Any logical person would want to know the answer. But Emma did not have a logical answer. She did not have a carefully thought-out explanation. "Because he was scared," she said simply. "And I could help." Cora stared at her for a long moment. The alpha's expression shifted through several emotions that Emma could not quite read. Confusion, disbelief, and then something else. Something that looked almost like awe. "You risked your life for a child that was not yours," Cora said slowly. "For a species that is not yours. For a cub that you had never even spoken to." "Yes, that is not logical." Emma smiled despite the pain. "Humans are not always logical." "No," Cora agreed. "You are not. That is what makes you terrifying." Emma laughed. It hurt her ribs, but she laughed anyway. "Terrifying? I'm an engineer. I fix broken pipes. You flew through fire to save a stranger's child." Cora's voice was serious now, almost reverent. "You did not hesitate. You did not calculate the odds. You saw my cub in danger, and you simply acted. My people have studied humans for decades. We have called you reckless. We have called you crazy. We have never understood why you do the things you do." She paused, looking down at Bryn sleeping peacefully against her chest. "Now I understand," Cora continued. "You do not think about survival the way we do. You do not calculate risk the way we do. When you see someone in danger, some part of you simply refuses to let them die, even if it costs your life, even if it makes no sense." Emma did not know what to say to that. It felt too big, too important. She was just an engineer. She had just done what anyone would do, except that was not true, was it? The other aliens had not moved. They had watched through the windows, horrified but frozen. Only Emma had jumped. "My mate died saving others," Cora said suddenly. "He was a warrior. He died protecting his pack from an enemy ambush. I thought that kind of sacrifice was something only Velorith understood. I thought it was unique to our species." She looked at Emma with new eyes. "I was wrong. Your people understand it too. Perhaps better than we do." Emma reached out and gently touched Bryn's sleeping head. The cub's fur was soft under her fingers. He made a small sound of contentment and snuggled closer to his mother. "All people want to protect the ones they love," Emma said quietly. "I think that's universal. But you did not love my cub. You did not even know him. I know what it feels like to be scared and alone. I know what it feels like to need help." Emma met Cora's eyes steadily. "That's enough." Cora was silent for a long time. The medical team finished their work and stepped back, giving the two of them space. Around them, the station slowly returned to normal. The alarms stopped. The emergency lights faded. Life went on. Finally, Cora spoke again. "In my culture, when someone saves your child, they become part of your pack. They become family. It is the highest honor a Velorith can give." She reached out and placed her massive clawed hand over Emma's small human hand. "You are pack now, Emma Parker. You are family. And the Velorith do not forget their family." Emma felt tears forming in her eyes. She did not try to stop them. "Thank you," she whispered. Cora shook her great head. "No, thank you. Thank you for my son's life. I will never be able to repay that debt." "There is no debt," Emma said. "Family doesn't keep score." Cora's fanged mouth curved into something that might have been a smile. It was terrifying and beautiful at the same time. "No," the Alpha agreed. "Family does not keep score." And sitting there on the floor of a damaged space station, surrounded by the chaos of an emergency, a human and a Velorith became something more than strangers. They became pack. The story spread faster than a plasma fire. Within hours, everyone on Harmony Ring knew what had happened. Within days, it had reached other stations and ships. Within weeks, it had crossed into nearly every corner of the galaxy. A human had jumped into zero gravity to save a Velorith cub. A small, soft, breakable human had done what no other species could do. She had flown through chaos and fire and debris, and she had saved a child that was not her own. The galaxy did not know what to make of this. Scientists studied the footage from the security cameras. They watched Emma push off the wall and launch herself into the void. They watched her twist and spin, catching floating objects to change her direction. They watched her grab Bryn and kick off the panel just as the plasma erupted behind her. "Remarkable," they said. "Impossible," they said. How did she know how to do that? The answer was simple, but the galaxy did not understand it. Humans had been playing in zero gravity for hundreds of years. They had swimming pools on their home world where they learned to move through water without touching the bottom. They had airplanes that flew in patterns to create weightlessness, and humans floated inside them for fun. They had built space stations and lived in them, bouncing off walls and spinning through corridors and laughing the whole time. To humans, Zero gravity was not terrifying. It was a playground. Other species had evolved on stable worlds with steady gravity. When the gravity disappeared, they panicked. Their bodies did not know what to do. Their instincts failed them, but humans adapted. Humans always adapted. It was the most frightening thing about them. The Velroth Council held a formal meeting 6 weeks after the incident. Representatives from every Velroth clan gathered together, something that happened only rarely. They had a decision to make. Alpha Cora stood before them and told the story of how Emma had saved Bryn. She did not add drama or emotion. She simply stated the facts. The explosion. The gravity failure. Her cub drifting toward death. The human who had jumped without hesitation. The council listened in silence. When Cora finished, the eldest council member spoke. "What do you propose, Alpha Cora?" "I propose that we declare humanity as pack friends of the Velroth people. All humans, everywhere, for all time. They have earned this honor through the actions of one of their own." The council members looked at each other. This was a significant decision. The title of pack friend had never been given to an entire species before. It meant that any human could claim protection from any Velroth clan. It meant that to attack a human would be the same as attacking a Velroth. "One human saved one cub," a younger council member said. "Is that enough to honor an entire species?" Cora's golden eyes flashed. "One human showed us the heart of her people. She did not know my cub. She had no reason to risk her life. But she saw a child in danger, and she could not stand by and watch. She told me that was simply what humans do." She paused, letting her words sink in. "If this is truly what humans do," Cora continued, "then they are worthy of our respect. They are worthy of our protection. They are worthy of being called pack friends." The council voted unanimously in favor. On Harmony Ring, Emma knew nothing of this. She had returned to work after her ankle healed, walking with a slight limp that the doctor said would fade with time. She fixed pipes. She repaired computers. She crawled through vents to find strange noises. Life went on, but things had changed. Every morning, Cora found her in the mess hall. The Alpha would sit across from her with a tray of food that looked terrifying to human eyes, but smelled surprisingly good. They would eat together in comfortable silence. Two very different beings who had become something like friends. Bryn came with his mother most mornings. The cub had recovered completely from his ordeal. He was just as curious as before, just as adventurous. But now, when he wandered off to explore, he always wandered toward Emma. He would climb into her lap and curl up against her chest, his small heart beating steadily, his purring filling the air. Emma would stroke his soft fur and listen to Cora tell stories about the Velroth home world. Stories about great hunts and ancient battles. Stories about love and loss and family. Other aliens on the station noticed the change. They saw the fierce Alpha treating a human engineer like a beloved sister. They saw the cub seeking out Emma's company like she was part of his pack. They began to look at humans differently. Maybe these strange, reckless creatures were not so confusing after all. Maybe their willingness to risk everything for strangers was not madness. Maybe it was something else. Something that the galaxy needed more of. The message from the Velroth Council arrived on a Tuesday. Emma was in the engineering bay when Cora found her, carrying a formal document sealed with the mark of the Velroth people. "What is this?" Emma asked, confused. Cora placed the document in her hands. "Read it." Emma read it. Then she read it again. Then she looked up at Cora with wide eyes. "Pack friends? All humans? Because of what I did?" Cora nodded. "Your actions showed us who your people truly are. The council decided that such a species deserves our highest honor." Emma did not know what to say. She had just been doing her job. She had just been helping a scared child. She had never meant to change the relationship between two entire species. I don't know if all humans are like me, Emma said quietly. Some of us are selfish. Some of us are cruel. We're not all heroes. Cora placed her massive hand on Emma's shoulder. No species is entirely good or entirely bad. We know this. But you showed us something important, Emma Parker. You showed us that when it matters most, humans run toward danger to help others. Even strangers. Even members of other species. She smiled her terrifying, beautiful smile. That is enough. That is more than enough. Emma looked down at the document in her hands. It felt heavy, full of meaning and responsibility. Billions of humans scattered across the galaxy had just been given the protection of the Velorth people. Because one engineer had jumped into zero gravity to save a cub. I hope we deserve this, Emma whispered. Cora's hand squeezed her shoulder gently. You already do. Outside the viewport, the stars burned cold and distant. They had been watching the galaxy for billions of years, seeing species rise and fall, seeing empires crumble and new ones grow. They had seen war and peace, hatred and love, cruelty and kindness, and now they watched as two species, different in almost every way, found common ground in the simplest truth of all. Family was not about blood or species or biology. Family was about who showed up when you needed them. Family was about who jumped into the void to save you when everything was falling apart. Emma Parker was packed now. And across the galaxy, other humans were beginning to build bridges with species that had once feared them. It would take time. It would take work. There would be misunderstandings and conflicts and moments of doubt. But it had begun. And that was what mattered. In the mess hall of Harmony Ring, a human engineer shared breakfast with a Velorth Alpha while a small cub slept peacefully between them. The morning was quiet. The station hummed with life. And somewhere out in the vast darkness of space, the future was waiting to be. Written. It would be a future where humans and Velorth stood together. A future where the galaxy learned what humanity truly meant. A future that had started with a single jump into the void. A single act of courage. A single moment when one person had refused to let a child die alone. And that was how empires began. Not with conquest or war, but with compassion. With the simple, stubborn refusal to look away from someone who needed help. The end.